From the cutting edge of anomaly research, you are about to experience The Evidence with your host, 3D pioneer and image analyst with Mars X3D, D.W. Gannett.
Delusion. We all have it, don't we? I've got it. Everybody's got their own form of delusion somewhere inside of them that we use to make comfortable the reality that's around us. Comfortable little boxes, comfortable little snuggle areas that we reinforce our delusions so that nothing disturbs us. It smooths the path, and we all do it, and we all need it, frankly. Delusion is a function of the human psyche. But delusion can be a double-edged sword. For example, there are those who will look at these anomalies and say, "You're deluded. Those are just rocks." And of course, there'll be others, maybe like myself, who will maintain, "I'm sorry, I believe you're deluded because you haven't actually looked at the evidence in X3D. So delusion comes in all shapes and sizes and packages, and I want to thank my friend Neville Thompson for saving me from making more of a fool of myself by, AI. I was about to use this AI image this past week until I ran it by Neville, and he said, "Nope, that's not what is actually there. Here is what is actually there." And you can see the difference, right? AI, especially used in photo processing, tends to give us what it expects that we want. It tends to make faces out of things that are close to being faces. And as I mentioned last time, AI has pareidolia. So anyway, thank you, Nev. So I didn't end up having egg on my face. But, hey, we've had such a good time this past Tuesday night with the live hang. Thank you, all of you who participated. There were some terrific questions, a long conversation. And I would urge you, if you're not doing anything on Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is GMT -5, to stop by, ask some questions, open the door, poke your head in, say howdy, and then go on about your business, whatever works for you. But we're gradually learning. I'm learning some of the bells and whistles. I'm a long ways from being where I need to be with the live stream, but we're working on it and we're having fun. So I hope you'll come along. You're certainly invited. And by the way, this is a special edition of The Evidence for this reason. I mentioned delusion earlier. I'm using a lot of images, except for the last two, that are blurry, close to being to the breakup point, but when you view them in X3D, they're actually much clearer than they look in 2 dimensions. That's the miracle of our property of 3D vision. It clears things up automatically. I don't know how the brain does that, but it does. But if you look at these images just as flat images, they really don't look like much. You need that parallax, you need the 3D window to form a much clearer picture of what's being presented. So it's a little bit of an experiment on my part. I don't know if you'll like it, but hopefully you will. And I can begin salting in some, I think, pretty good anomalies, but that just aren't as crystal clear as I would normally like them to be. Anyway, shut up, Dave. Enough talk. Here we go with the images for this week. Jim West pointed this one out the other day, and you got to admit this is an interesting photo. What we're gonna look at is hidden in deep shadow down there on the left. But before we do that, there's this structure inside the yellow box that seems a lot like a roadway, or maybe even a bridge. Or it could just be an interesting bit of geology. I like that big notched slab right on the right edge of the picture. It almost looks like a bridge abutment, doesn't it? I didn't want to get off in the weeds with this thing because there's not much to be seen when you zoom in on it. It's one of those either or things with me. Let's move in on what might just possibly be a megalithic wall. The part we're interested in is inside the purple box. I pulled the shadows way back so we could get a bit more detail. Look at all those right angles, big and small, and that parallel slab running front to back, all of it the same thickness, nicely rounded edge in front, and what might be additional structures along its side. And when you look at the back end of this thing, there are all kinds of tubing and shapes that frankly shouldn't be there. So, is this part of a buried structure associated with that bridge or roadway in the background? Maybe. Take a tip from both Jim and me, though. If you take the time to dig into the shadows, you might be surprised at what pops up. Dean Sattler often finds some pretty interesting stuff. As he dug down into this context view, he came across what seems to be a literal junkyard up there in the back. If you think this is just a bunch of rocks, well, there's nothing I can do to open your eyes, I guess. I don't really know what exactly these things are, but I'm pretty sure we're not looking at rocks. Let's move in a bit. I like the piece with teeth in the lower right-hand corner, and as you let your eyes relax into the scene, you'll find a lot more items that are as clearly manufactured as they are just plain weird. Remember when I mentioned that anomalies were like water moccasins? Wherever you find one, you can bet there'll be another one nearby. I did a little digging around in this same image and found a few more things I thought you might enjoy seeing. I know we're a little past the point of breakup on this one, but still, what do you make of this? I especially like that device on the right. Reminds me of a bottle jack that some of you might have in your cars. And look at these two things I'll outline for you in just a moment. That one in front looks mechanical to me. See the right angles and how it's made of several different kinds of material. And the one in back, yeah, it's blurry, and I probably shouldn't even have included it in this video, but it sure looks like it's manufactured and made out of polished metal to my eyes. Let's get back to some items that are a bit more clear. I like blocks. They're so common as you work your way around Mars that they almost get a little irritating. So when I find a block with something on it, I love to share it with you guys, even if it's a little bit blurry. It looks like there might be carvings or even possibly gears on the shaded side. Then there's that strange circular plate attached to the sunlit side, with a tube coming out of it, dead center. I'd walk over and stuff this artifact in my duffel bag, for sure. Oh, and by the way, check out that interesting structure that fills up the right-hand corner. Does that look natural to you? I didn't think so. We sure find a lot of stuff on Mars that looks like metal. What caught my eye on this one was the square shape and even thickness, which you can see even at a distance. Let's move in for a closer look. Wow, what is that? It's clearly non-fractal. It shines like metal in the sunlight, and it seems to have tubes or fittings on the shaded part. I know it's blurry. This is as close as we can get without it turning into garbage, but I think it's still worth a look. Our last item in 2611 reminds me of a twisty ice cream cone. Even in the context view, you can see what looks like, a narwhal's horn sticking out of the rubble. So, what is it? If only we had a decent image instead of the blurry paint-by-number pictures that we have to deal with. Now, I realize it's out of focus, and I realize that it could be sunlight overexposing on a rock structure. But here's the thing. We've found other things sticking out of rocks before. Take a look. Is that a piece of ancient plumbing hidden behind the boulder? And what are we supposed to do about this spigot sticking straight out of the cliff? So, what do you think? Geology, archaeology, or just plain crazyology? I slip somewhere between the last two. You're gonna see why I call this one Pareidolia alert in just a moment. We are hardwired to see faces. It's a survival thing, and it's almost impossible to ignore. I know at least one popular anomalist who will immediately add this to his collection of faces and statues with, and that last word has quotes around it, and who knows, maybe he's right. So, do you see it? Kind of a grumpy guy wearing goggles and sporting a crest and kind of looking like the creature from the Black Lagoon's Kid Brother. And look in front of him. Looks like he's giving us the finger, doesn't it? Let me rotate this thing for you. It always seems odd to me when details like the eyes, the nose, and the mouth all just happen by chance. So do we call this a carved head or an accident of erosion? Let's wrap up this rather strange episode with something even stranger. Right in the middle, at the top, a big old chunk of something sticking up from the surrounding plain. Yeah, it's our old friend, Froggy. I don't know what this is, but it sure looks like some kind of lizard or amphibian with a gaping mouth, doesn't it? I mean, look at the spine, the lumps, the folded back leg, and of course that big old mouth. Makes me think of those critters they put on fountains with water squirting out of their mouths. It's hard for me to imagine how this might form naturally. It could have, I guess, but I don't know how. It really is easier sometimes to just say, it's a rock, and move on. If I did that, I wouldn't have to think about any of this stuff anymore. But where's the fun in that? Well, that's a wrap for this week, and I don't want to be using blurry pictures all the time, but just so you know my side of the fence, coming up with 6 or so world-class anomalies every week, well, there are not a whole lot of people doing that. I may be the only one right now. But I can keep working at it. I want to give you good stuff. And, by now, we have a Patreon account. And so many thanks to our patrons who support this channel, helping us to keep it ad-free. Can you imagine those ads popping up and ruining your viewing experience? I sure don't want that. So thank you, one and all, who are choosing to participate in this way. This is your buddy Dave over at Mars X 3D. Be well.